May I say something after
All right.
this proceeding? Oh, never mind. I'd like to get a copy of the agreement from my attorney.
Absolutely.
Okay.
All right. Let's be on the record in, oh, sorry, I didn't mute that. All right. Let's be on the record in case number 2020 CR420, caption State of Kansas versus Kevin Rogers. Would the parties announce their appearances, please?
It please the court, Assistant District Attorney Bianca Finney on behalf of the state of Kansas.
May it please court, defendant Kevin Rogers appears by Zoom in custody with counsel Anthony Russo, also by Zoom.
All right, we are here set down for a plea hearing today. Mr. Rogers, I'm going to officially go over this plea with you, and I'm going to have to ask you a lot of questions, okay?
Yes, sir.
While I'm doing that, I want you to listen closely. If you don't understand something I ask you, ask me about it, and we'll talk about it and make sure we're all on the same page. At any time, if you have any questions about the things we're talking about, you ask those, so I can make sure when we're done with this that you understand everything you're doing and it's what you want to do, okay?
Yes, sir.
All right, and also, if any time when I ask you a question, if you want to talk to Mr. Russo in private about my question before answering, you can do that. You just tell me, and we'll do the same thing like we did before we came on the record here. We'll just send you guys to a private room to talk about that, okay?
Okay.
All right. Now, to ask you all these questions, I have to have you sworn in. So if you'd raise your right hand, my court reporter will swear you in.
You solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
So help me God.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Rogers, how far did you go in school?
GED.
All right. You reading right okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, there was some talk about mental health court and you haven't gone through it in Jackson County and things like that. Do you feel like right now you're in full control of your faculties?
Yes, sir.
All right. Do you understand where we're at, what we're doing, all of those things?
Yes, sir.
All right. I know you're in custody, so I'm going to assume you're not under the influence of any alcohol or drugs. Do you take any prescription medicine that might keep you from understanding what's going on?
No, sir.
Feel like your mind is clear today?
Yes, sir.
All right. Do you understand the original charges in this case?
Yes, sir.
All right. And you know that you don't have to change your plea from not guilty to guilty. If you wanted to maintain your not guilty plea, you'd be entitled to a jury trial on this case. You understand that?
Yes, sir.
At that trial, the state would have to put on enough evidence to prove you guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. You wouldn't have to prove anything. Mr. Russo would assist you through that trial. He could cross-examine and confront all of the state's witnesses and their evidence. He would call any witnesses you wanted called. And if they didn't want to come to court, he could use subpoena power to make them come to court. You understand all that?
I do, Your Honor.
Okay. Now, at that trial, you would have an absolute right to testify on your own behalf, but you would also have the right not to testify. And if you decided not to testify, the state couldn't use that against you to argue that you have to be guilty. You understand that?
Yes, sir.
All right. Now, if we go forward with this plea and finish this today, you're going to be giving up all of those rights. There's not going to be any kind of trial in this case. You understand that?
Yes, sir.
All right. Now, I'm going to show you a document here and ask you if you recognize it. Well, first, I guess I'm going to ask you if you can see it. All right. You recognize that document?
Yes, sir.
All right. Is this the plea petition that Mr. Russo went over with you?
That it is correct. Yes, it is.
Do you feel like you understand everything that's in that plea petition?
Yes, I do.
All right. And let's see. There's not a signature on this one, but I think you signed one that Mr. Russo had, correct?
That is correct, Your Honor.
Okay. Now it says here that the plea agreement is that you're going to plead guilty to count 1, which is the burglary, a level 9 non-person felony, and count 2, criminal destruction of property, a level 9 non-person felony. The other counts will be dismissed.
That
The
is
state's
correct.
going to agree to join in a recommendation for the mitigated, in other words, the lesser number in the box. You're to obtain a mental health eval and follow those recommendations. That nobody else will be seeking any departures. Is that your understanding of the plea?
That is correct, Your Honor. I had one question regarding
Sure.
that. Is that there regarding a PSI? I don't know what a PSI is.
Okay, so a PSI is it's the initials for a pre-sentence investigation. So what there's going to be is somebody from probation office is going to go through your record, all right? And they are going to look at all the criminal history. In other words, anytime you've had a conviction for anything, it's going to show up in that pre-sentence investigation.
I had lots of them.
Then
yeah.
they're going to take that, the number of the offense, the level of the offense, and they're going to put it on the grid with your criminal history, and they're going to have what's called your presumptive sentence. In other words, the sentence I'm supposed to give you. I suppose Mr. Russo showed you those sentencing guidelines, right?
Yes, but I did. I would just maybe go over them just for a second or so, if you could.
Well, I don't have them here in front of me to share, but what they basically are it's the grid that, like I said, you find the appropriate criminal history, you go down to the level of crime, and you see the presumptive sentence. Anybody else have those that they could pop up on the screen? There we go. You see what Mr. Russo's showing?
No.
Oh, look, because I'm on, let me stop this share. All right. Now, Mr. Russo, can you see what Mr. Russo is showing you?
No, I can't see it, but I think I understand he's showing a grid box. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay, I understand that part, which I cannot see it. But my question is, I think I should have just asked this question, is that can it is the PSI, can it change the outcome of today's or the next the sentencing phase of this plea agreement?
Okay, so here's the deal. When that PSI comes in, the state's going to get a copy, I'm going to get a copy, and your lawyer's going to get a copy.
Correct.
And he's going to go over that with you and make sure that there's nothing in there that shouldn't be in there. And that happens from time to time. People have the same name, or a social security number gets screwed up, and all of a sudden they've got somebody's other case in there,
I
right?
mean, I've had lots of
So
felonies.
he goes over that with you, and then it becomes official. He told me that he expects you to be a C, but that's not official until I see the PSI. And
Right.
to answer your question, if the PSI comes back and you are higher than a C,
Right.
yes, it will affect the sentence that you get.
So that means that instead of the offer that the state has offered, the people has offered, that is all that's thrown out the window, and then I'm going to prison.
Well, it's not all thrown out the window. They are recommendations, and I was going to get to this part of it,
Okay.
but
correct.
it is important for you to know, and it's a good question, and that's why we talk about it here. What
Right.
they're talking about on these sentences, they are recommendations from the parties, right? So the
Right.
state has gotten together with Mr. Russo and said, we can agree that at sentencing, we'll both stand up and say this, right? And what their agreement in this particular case was that that they would recommend the lower number in the box and no other departures.
Okay.
So given that, if you're a C, like they suspect you are, then you're presumptive probation, and that's where you would fall. Now, if you are higher than that, a B, you
Right.
would not be presumptive probation. They would have to stand by those recommendations that I'm showing you right there. And then I would decide to give you whatever sentence I decide to give you.
Okay.
That goes for no matter what the recommendations are. Okay. Whenever they agree to recommend a certain sentence, that's never binding on the court. And I'm free to give you any sentence. either harder or softer than you expect, as long as it's allowed by the law. Okay? So
Okay.
that's one thing you have to understand, that however this comes out, they're going to be standing up and making these recommendations, but I can do anything that the law allows me to do. Make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. That's why I'm gonna try to go through mental health and try to do better. But the thing is that because I have an extensive felony history, and I know that, but I've never really had anything like terrible or anything. I've had like a lot of forgeries, and I had I had something in California, I had, burglaries and stuff, and back, but I haven't had anything in 22 years. I've been
Okay.
pretty good. You know what I mean? I guess, I've been homeless for so long, and that's what my main thing was, is that, I don't know. But the thing is, I just got scared because I was trying to tell my attorney, well, I had a second degree thing in California, robbery in California. That was the worst thing I've ever had. That was 21 years ago. And ever since then, I've just been homeless. I don't get in really much trouble in it,
All
drug.
right. Listen, Mr. Rogers,
Yes, sir.
I want you to understand this. I
Yes, sir.
never make bonds part of agreements.
All right.
Okay. So if you feel like you want more time to think about this and to talk with Mr. Russo, I want you to tell me that, because I don't want you doing this and then going back to your cell and going, damn, I shouldn't have done that. Okay.
Okay.
That's why I'm asking all these questions.
I understand.
I don't want you to feel any pressure. The court's here, we're all here. I have to do this because I said I would. That is absolutely not true. And if you want more time to think about it, to talk to Mr. Russo and make sure that this is what you want to do, that won't bother me at all.
I'm okay with what I like to proceed.
Okay.
Thank you,
All
sir.
right. So do you have, yeah, Mr.
If I
Russo?
may, I know he has one other question about PSIs. I explained to him that adult court services usually requires 4 to 6 weeks to prepare that. He wanted me to try and get it sooner, but
Yeah.
we also explained that to Mr.
Yeah.
Rogers that
They
require-
have a ton of cases. They have a ton of cases.
I understand
And
that.
my guess is it's going to be 6 weeks until we get back here. But again, I have no problem with you looking for a signature bond. If it, and like I said, I can't promise you they'll grant you one, but I'll have the people look at you. No problem.
Whatever you decide to do, Your Honor, on that part.
All right. So we're good. Did I answer all your questions about the pre-sentence investigation?
Yes, you answered them all. I think you have. So I
Good
think
deal.
we can proceed.
Okay. So I'm sharing this document again, and I read you that plea agreement. Is that your understanding of the entire plea agreement?
It is my understanding, Your Honor.
Okay. Has anybody else promised you anything other than what I just read to you to get you to plead guilty today?
No, sir.
Anybody placed any force or threats against you to make you plead guilty today?
No, sir.
Okay. Now what I have to do, we talked all about that, that PSI and the criminal history and things like that. And Mr. Russo believes you're a C. I assume Miss Finney agrees that that's what she thinks you are. But I don't know and won't know until that pre-sentence investigation comes in and all of that is done. Okay. So what I have to do today is assume you have the very worst criminal history so that I can advise you what the maximum that anyone can get for this crime is.
Okay.
Do you understand that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, this is part of the plea agreement too, so I'll show it. Mr. Russo's placed here that the maximum allowed punishment for this case would be 24 months imprisonment and a fine of $100,000 with a post-release supervision term of 12 months. Do you understand those are, yes, Mr. Russo?
Judge, how I got that number is a 9A is actually 17
Yep.
and a 9I is 6. So between the two counts, that's how I arrived at 24 months.
Right. That would actually be 23, but but in any event, so what Mr. Russo is telling you, like, if you had the very worst criminal history and I gave you the maximum you could get, that's the most anybody could get. Do you understand that?
I understand that.
Okay. All right.
That's all understood.
Super. All right. Mr. Rogers, do you have any other questions for me at this time about anything that we've gone over?
No, sir.
All right. And has any of this changed your mind about wanting to go forward with the plea today?
No, sir.
Mr. Russo, do you know any reason why your client should not plead guilty today?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Then I'm going to ask you, Mr. Rogers, as to count one, that being a burglary, a level 9 non-person felony, how do you plead, guilty or not guilty?
I plead guilty, Your Honor.
All right. As to count two, criminal destruction of property, a level 9 non-person felony, how do you plead, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty, Your Honor.
All right. Now, Mr. Rogers, I want you to listen closely because I'm going to ask Miss Finney to tell us what she thinks the evidence would be in this case. And when she's done, I'm going to ask you if you heard her and if you agree that that's what the evidence would be, okay?
Yes, sir.
All right, Miss Finney.
Okay. So on or about May 9th, 2020, officers for the Kansas City, Kansas Police Department responded to 1725 State Avenue, Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Kansas, also known as Prestige Auto, on an alarm call. Upon arrival, contact was made with Kevin Rogers, who was found on the property. Mr. Rogers advised that he had just cut through that parking lot as a shortcut. At that time, owners of that business were not able to respond to the officers, so officers released Mr. Rogers on the scene. Later that morning, Roxana Gamaro, the manager of Prestige Auto, came to work and noticed that a key to a Chevy Equinox was missing. She reviewed the camera systems and noticed the suspect enter a white 2012 Chevrolet Equinox. When she checked the vehicle, the seats and the carpet were damaged. The total cost to replace the damage to the vehicle is over $2,000. Officer Kelly of KCKPD stated that although there's no clear picture of the suspect's face, the surveillance video showed the suspect, it showed that it was the same person that he had encountered earlier that evening. And all of this occurred in Wyandotte County.
All right. Mr. Rogers, is that what happened in this case?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. I will find the defendant has freely, voluntarily, and intelligently entered his plea today. He understands the nature of the charges and consequences of the plea. The state has provided a sufficient factual basis for a finding of guilt, and I will find he is in fact guilty of count 1 and count 2. All other counts are dismissed per the plea agreement. I'm ordering a pre-sentence investigation and continuing this sentencing pending the receipt of that investigation. Let's see. As a convicted felon, Mr. Rogers, it's prohibited for you to own or possess a firearm and certain kind of deadly cutting instruments like dirks, daggers, switchblades, basically knives that could be considered deadly weapons. I won't go through the whole list, but suffice it to say, before you decide to own or possess any kind of weapons like that, make sure you talk to a good lawyer like Mr. Russo to make sure that it wouldn't be reason for your probation to be revoked or new charges. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So how about, I think I should always have this calendar. Let's try and set our sentencing right now.
As soon as possible, if you can.
Let's see.
I'm hoping it's.
Hold on one second. I got to pull up my calendar here and see.
I'm hoping it's September, Your Honor.
Well, we're at the start of September, so I don't think you're going to get a PSI done before September. Now, I do need to ask you this while we're on the record here and all of that. I have no problem today reaching out to pretrial services and asking them to screen you for an OR bond. Do you want me to do that?
If you, the only question is with that is that by doing that, will that delay the next hearing, the sentencing? That's my question.
Only if you get picked up and held in Jackson County.
Okay. and Jackson County holds me longer than the hearing, correct?
If they hold you, yes, I'm gonna set this hearing.
They won't.
If they're holding you at the time of the hearing, then I issue a bench warrant for you and they send you back over here as soon as you're done. If you're out, then you just show up and we do the sentencing then.
Right, I don't see me doing that, because the thing is that I look to get, not mental health court, but, drug court is what, my attorney over there said, that was what they're doing with me, so.
Well, let's do this. For some reason, the court
It don't
computer's not allowing me to log on
Whatever
remotely.
you want to do, I'll tell you what, you guys do what you want to do. I want to go by with what Mr. Anthony wants, because I don't want him to get mad and so upset with me about it, so.
Look, I've worked with Mr. Russo for a long time. He does his clients a lot of good.
I know
He
he does.
knows the law and he advises them thusly. He doesn't get mad at people for asking questions or doing things like that. So you're fine. Court computer won't let me in. How about we look at October 9 at 9 a.m.? I don't think I have anything set then.
Okay,
Why, thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Russo.
Well, I've got Overland Park in the morning, but I can do it. I can do it
Okay.
after.
there we go.
Okay,
Here's
we'll do
my-
it by Zoom,
Yeah,
unless. Mr. Rogers, when you get
sir.
out of custody, will you have access to a computer or a phone that you could
Yes,
do
sir.
a hearing by this way?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Miss Finney, does that date work for you?
Yes, Your Honor.
October 9 at 9 o'clock in the morning. So I guess you do want me to go ahead and request them to screen you for OR.
Well, if they can screen me, but you know, that I don't see any reason why that shouldn't be asked for. I don't see
Okay.
any reason why.
Yeah. No, all right. I have no problem doing that. And look, if you get out, there's a, let's see, let me look at the PSI request. Okay, the PSI request has you living at 444 North 18th Street.
Yes,
Is that where you plan on going back?
yeah, that's my residence, apartment number 3.
Okay, so sometime in the next couple of weeks, probation will be reaching out to you
Yes, sir.
to request that you do a pre-sentence investigation, okay?
Now,
If you don't hear from them in like 2 weeks, if you're out, get a hold of Mr. Russo because something went wrong.
right
okay.
now, I'm in custody. If I'm in custody, when would they get a hold of me?
They'll come over and see you.
Okay, because I suspect probably I'll still be in custody, but I just wanted to see if I had a chance, because I'm trying to keep my housing. I have housing through Wyandotte to the Frank Williams Center here on 7th Street, and the Wyandotte Center is my mental health. But I want to make sure I keep my housing. I don't want to lose my apartment.
I understand completely. All right, so we'll see everybody on October 9th at 9 a.m. Anything else for our record today?
Yeah.
Your Honor.
Good night.
Another
10
night.
a.m.
Adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Thank